LDnet. And very glad to see so many of our old friends. I don't want to say old, but long-standing friends, and some new friends as well who joined us today. And we're actually going to start with the formal part of our meeting, as we try every year since we have our general assemblies online. We try to link them with an interesting discussion that would encourage other audiences than just the most active of our members. And so today we have also thought of linking the formal part of our General Assembly with a discussion on capacity building for CLLD. I hope that this is a topic that will warm you all up and make you all very interested generally in LDnet work. But just to get the formal part out of the way, I think we have to start with the report of the executive board as to what has happened in the past year since our last General Assembly, which I believe was the 2nd of February or something like that, or just anyway, somewhere around that time. So if you agree, Harris, as General Secretary, you would probably give us the structure for the report, and then all of us who were involved will come in with details. Is that all right?
Yeah, thanks, Ursula. I've got the main headings of the report on this slide, but on the Zoom, if you haven't visited our website, you will find the link where the full report is uploaded. This year we started with the previous General Assembly on the 2nd of February, and we discussed their mission statement, which emphasized the fact that we're working across all types of territory and across a wide range of themes. And we try to act as a bridge between experts, researchers, activists, and policymakers. So in this context, we have carried out a number of activities, and we have somehow completed. We continued with the CLD country profiles and horizontal analysis, and we did recently an article with Ursula and Stefan, in fact, in the lead, to wrap up where we are now. And this has been accepted for publication of the World Journal. So we'll have also a wider audience. The other activity is a Rebound project, which comes under Erasmus+, and it's about fostering resilience in rural communities. The main activity was on compiling state-of-the-art knowledge in the field of rural community resilience and well-being through a questionnaire and also focus groups. And main research contribution from our side has been by Ursula and Alistair. On the management side of the project, our role as partner has been passed on to IDL because of technicalities in the rules of this particular Erasmus Plus period, which made it difficult for us to fulfill. A newer initiative is on urban CLLD. We have started from the point that although urban CLLD lags are now established in the previous period, 2014-2020, there is still no dedicated support to improve the quality of CLD in urban areas. So we opened dialogue with the European Urban Initiative And we hope we'll be able to do something in this field, perhaps starting with a pilot activity, a pilot event in May or June. And several colleagues are involved, and Peter has taken the lead on this. We have continued with the website. You've probably seen it, or you probably received newsletters which guide you to there, to different, basically we cover information on events and publications, but we try and we do publish also original articles, reviews, critical feedback, and you've probably seen contributions from Robert Lucas, who is somewhere in Africa today, so he is not joining the assembly, and other colleagues. And we've continued and probably, I would say, intensified cooperation with other networks and projects. And we've, of course, as I mentioned, AADL and the RSA as in previous years. And now we have also EUI and of course, several lags. And an example of that is the Meridonia lag, which brought us into another Erasmus Plus project, ECOOP. It's called Enabling Communities to Respond to Energy, Social, and Environmental Needs. Now we are still looking into the feasibility of us participating in its implementation. Perhaps I haven't checked the participants, but Angela Loporchio from Meridonia or Daniele Borelli have registered already with us now. The board of directors continued its activities, and all this and the other items, I've asked Alex and kindly agreed to put the links to various items we have published. So you can see we elected a board of directors last year for a 2-year term. So you will see the names if you would like to refresh your memory. And this will continue for another year. We do the regular meetings, but also smaller groups of members of LDnet and other people active in LDnet participate in the various projects and initiatives that I've mentioned. Now we've put this report together with Ursula and Jean-Pierre Pellegrin, who is our treasurer. And you will see there the key figures. We had a fundraising effort last year, not this year. So that had closed with just over 4,000 euros in the bank. We had the usual smaller expenses this year, or participation in events, website hosting, maintenance, and bank charges, 700 euros. And we are left with 3,500. So these are the main headings of what we've been doing in the last 12 months, and other colleagues may wish to add, and other participants may wish to ask questions. Thank you.
Many thanks, Harris. This was very good and concise summary. And I think there are things that can be explored more in detail. I would like to invite colleagues definitely to join in. Maybe I will start with adding a little bit on the Rebound project. That indeed is one of the biggest chunks of activity that we are doing, even though we are no longer formally fulfilling the administrative part of the partner, being the role of a partner, but we are contributing quite a lot to the contents of the projects. Sorry that my colleague Alistair, who's sharing with me that task, is just on holiday this week, so unfortunately he wasn't able to join us. But I think there are some quite interesting already initial outcomes. This is as an Erasmus Plus project. The ultimate objective of this is to develop a training program for local actors and policymakers who would be interested in learning more how to foster resilience in rural communities. So we have done a number of case studies and reports to have an overview of the state of play of resilience in a number of EU countries, and also at a certain more EU level. We also had an interesting discussion with some LDnet colleagues within a focus group, which we organized in January, to help us define more precisely what rural resilience is and what are the factors of success and barriers. So this project is slowly progressing, and eventually we will get back to you, of course, with a ready-made product, a training program which has been or is going to be accredited in the Technical University of the Shannon in Ireland, but it can also be used as a non-accredited course anywhere. And that's, let's say, that's where we stand with this project. We, as I think has been clear from Horace's presentation, we are trying to keep a balance between this project work, which is slightly driven by the shape of the project that we joined, and our own work, where we are much more free to develop the topics that we think are the most relevant ones, and bring them to the attention of different stakeholders, decision makers, and so on. I would just mention one last point before I stop speaking for the moment. Is that when you mentioned the cooperation with ADL, and in particular, we have established this link with the recent initiative that ADL has launched, which is the European Local Innovation Forum. It is potentially a sister initiative that can have some linkages with what we're trying to do in LDnet, and we are discussing currently with ADL how to join forces and not to get into each other's way. Okay, I don't know, Peter.
Yep, I'm here. I was going to just say a couple of words on the initiative we're trying to push around supporting urban community-led local development, because although in rural areas we've had LEADER and we've had all sorts of support operations active over the last 3 decades, I think, but these days I think it's ENRD which does that role, and we've had FARNet supporting the development. And by the way, just in passing, there are 2,500 odd LEADER networks. Stefan will correct me later when I get these figures wrong. We've had FARNet supporting fisheries and coastal areas in developing their local action groups, and that's been in operation since 2008. But even though urban CLLD has been in existence since the 2014 to 20 period, which really kicked off in about 2015, there's never been any organized support for local action groups or for the managing authorities delivering CLLD for urban areas. And there's quite a groundswell of opinion among the 220 odd urban CLLDs that it would be fantastic if there was some mechanism whereby they could exchange experience, have some capacity built, and we're talking about capacity building in a more general sense in the second half of this meeting. And overall, there's a massive vacuum here, and we're basically saying to DG Regio, the Parliament, the Committee of the Regions, and particularly to the European Urban Initiative, which actually has a little budget of 500 million, and one of their tasks is to build capacity for integrated sustainable urban development. We're saying to these organizations, come on, stump up, let's do something for urban CLLD. And we don't think it's going to cost a huge amount. but we think it could have huge results in terms of building capacity. We'll talk about capacity later. So that's me over and out.
Thanks a lot. I would also say that after that session on capacity building, especially for urban CLFD, there will be also an opportunity to discuss further the broad directions of LDnet activities, and we'd like to hear your opinions. We would also like to encourage people to get involved into specific activities that we are planning to undertake, or that even propose activities people would like to participate in. And we would also have a discussion about the financial side. But I don't know if at this moment, Jean-Pierre, as our treasurer, would like to say something specific about our financial situation, or as part of the general report, or not necessarily.
You want to go out?
No, I have no comment, because it depends. When we should discuss according the activity of this year's activities. Do we really need money? In that case, it would be easy to launch a sort of fundraising campaign. I just remember that when they did in 2 years ago, we collected something like 1,400 euros. But I think the decision to be taken depends on the foreseen expenses during these years, which means the contribution to several activities, the cost of these activities, and so on. And especially should be mentioned on the agenda. It will be this question we'll discuss possibly later, of the participation in the e-co-op project. In that case, you remember, we have to open a new bank account and so on.
Yes, indeed. Many thanks, Jean-Pierre. I fully agree that we will discuss the financial needs as a function of, of the plans.
Yeah. This decision could be taken by the board, I think.
Yes, for the specific project, definitely, and of course for the fundraising as well. But I think we will open the floor also for comments and questions in a moment. Just any other members, I don't know, Stefan, or members of the board who would like to contribute to our report back. Stefan, I don't know if you want to relate a little bit your battles about the article.
Well, I'm going to introduce say a few words anyway now, but soon, once Peter decides to let me speak then about this. But no, not really. The article, yeah, it was we were just fighting still within some misunderstandings and some tiny formatting things. Where it should be a hyphen or should it be a dash, which takes a lot of time, unfortunately. But it's basically accepted and should be a good outlet for what we did and over the past year, summarized.
Yeah, I don't know much about this magazine, but the feeling I have is that they are like very high-level professionals, and it's good that we have managed to, thanks to especially your good work and Harris's, with my small contribution, that we managed to get this article.
Yeah, I suppose the fact that they're very thorough is probably a good sign. And normally they charge quite a bit of money for whatever reason. This one was a free contribution, so it doesn't cost. And yes, and the fact that they really look at dashes and hyphens and things like that and question everything is a good sign.
Yeah, and references, of course, and it's a lot of work to make this, to bring this to the level that they were expecting. But anyway, it's maybe not such a big experience for us as LDnet to be publishing scientific articles, so we are very excited about it. Okay, other colleagues would like to add something more to the report? And if not, then maybe I will, let's invite the other participants to ask us questions. And also, as we have quite a few people that are with us maybe for the first time, if there are any who would like to say hi and just introduce themselves and present themselves, or yes, ask further details about the activities of LDnet. This is the time. Arthur, yes, okay.
So I'm from Portugal. I think this is the second time I'm attending the General Assembly. In any case, just to say some words. Are you listening well? Yes.
Yes, we can hear you very well. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Well, I'm a professor at the university here in the northern part of Portugal. I'm presently retired, but I work mostly in the area of rural development, and I follow with great interest the activities of LDnet. And I'm very pleased to be here for the second time. And I've been attending some of your initiatives, workshops, webinars, etc. And always enjoying when I receive the newsletter and information from LDnet. So, well, this is greetings to all of you.
Many thanks, Arthur. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for joining, and looking
Welcome.
forward to discussing with you at a later stage. Then we have Jean-Pierre and then Carlo. I mean, Jean-Pierre Vercruis, because we had Jean-Pierre Pellegrin before. Jean-Pierre, yes, please go ahead. We will hear you better if you turn the microphone on. Yes, thank you.
Okay,
That's
sorry, that's very basic. So anyway, my name is Jean-Pierre Vercruis. I've been on subject of local development since the beginning of the LEADER program. So that's 1992 on LEADER 1, then LEADER 2, then had the chance to move into the European Commission and to work there on fostering CLLD, first of all in fisheries areas. And Peter mentioned the FarNet experience, so I had the chance to steer that. And then after to work on the concept of CLLD in multi-fund. I'm now retired and I'm still interested in working on CLLD because I still believe it's a great procedure. So I had the chance to do a case study recently on CLLD in Interreg on the Italian-Austrian border, which is very interesting. And I was invited to contribute to the discussion on capacity building. And now I have to say I'm pleased to be part of this LDnet gathering.
okay. Thank you very much. I think Carlo has had his hand raised before, but now he has.
Yes, I'm here.
He doesn't have it raised anymore, but I think I give you the chance.
Thank you.
But just let me say that also Josefina, who has introduced herself in a different way, she's written in the chat where she's from. So also welcome to Josefina. And Carla, over to you, sorry.
Thank you very much. Just to say ciao to everybody. I'm very glad to be here for the first time. My name is Carlo Ricci. I come from Italy. I am deeply involved in community-led local development since a very long time, both at local level, national level, and in the European networks. But I would like to spend just one word to say that in the last 2 years, after the pandemic period, in Italy, we have developed a lot of informal networking activities. And we have, since 2020, a leader forum that joins a lot of LAGs in a very collaborative way, without association, but just a network that organizes every year many online workshops and meetings and a big congress one time per year. And also another network that is a spin-off of this one, that is the Italian School of Local Development, that has the aim to attract youngs in LAGs, to say in 2 words. And we have several initiatives with volunteers, with young people, camps and things like this. So I hope that one time we'll be able to join these national activities with this very interesting European network. Thank you.
Great, that's an excellent idea, Carlo, and we hope to learn from your experience as well and benefit from it. Simona, then you have your hand raised.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, Harris and his team. I will not name everybody to which I would like to special say good evening, because you are many and I do not want to forget anybody, but hello to everybody and especially to my older friends. Now, regarding CLLD, I would like to say I'm also working decades ago. I started in the mid-90s, and I start with some emotions. I became a fan, I work in it, but I feel like it's not only a feeling. I have some material proofs that in the last 5 years, I mean, once with the pandemic, the CLLD was changed by a new paradigm. It was many times put something like being easy or being difficult or not understood, but I have very good examples, not only in Romania, but especially here, because I'm more familiar with what happened in my country, where CLLD built helping or supporting or providing different material or immaterial help to people during pandemic. This is the good side of what's happened, and expanding to networks like urban CLLD and everything else. At the same time, I am a little, I wouldn't say scared, but I'm very, let's say, intrigued by the fact that at the level of CLLD, it was asked to lead different things, to have local policies. And I met many people from Sweden to Portugal to Hungary, Romania, and other countries where I said local levels cannot be able to, by themselves, to lead and implement local policies. So I'm very happy to participate in this discussion. I'm very eager to learn from all of you, and thanks again.
Many thanks, Simona. That's actually a very good introduction to the next part of our meeting. If there are no other hands raised, I would pass over directly to Peter to introduce the core of our meeting today, which is the discussion on CLLD capacity building. Oh yes, we have also another introduction from Clémentine. Thank you very much also. And that's also hopefully somebody who can contribute to our discussion on CLLD and capacity building. Okay, Peter.
Thank you, Ursula.
Fine, your turn.
I'm going to quickly share my screen, which is, as usual, a complete mess. I can't even find where I've got my my one slide. Okay, it says I can't move a video while people are pinned. I don't know what that means, but here we go. And if I can share this properly, I'm beginning to seem like a hopeless person, but anyway, I'm hoping you can read that. I can't actually find the icon that gets it to share properly. Maybe I'll just
no worries, we can see it.
You can read it. Read it. Okay, so just before I introduce my guests, I just want to look at one definition of capacity building, and slightly contrary to what Ursula said earlier, we're looking at capacity building in the rounds. So capacity building for CLLD across all types of CLLD, which includes, I hope exhaustively, rural, obviously they were the first, fisheries, who were second. Then we have sort of ESF and ERDF, and much of that is in urban areas, but not all of it, because there is quite a bit of rural urban CLLD and even some rural ERDF CLLD, and probably some rural ESF CLLD. So that's enough acronyms for tonight. So the United Nations, this is the best definition I found. And those of you that work with this all the time, I'm looking at you, Loris, and Stefan, and a few others, might want to send to me other definitions, but I quite like this one. The United Nations defined capacity building as the process of developing and strengthening the skills, instincts, abilities, processes, and resources that organizations and communities need to survive, adapt, and thrive in a fast-changing world. And I think that's not so bad, because for two reasons. Firstly, it emphasizes the capacity as a function of both individuals and organizations. Obviously, organizations are made up of individuals. Sometimes they move on and capacity is lost. But I think it's good to see that it can have both an individual and an organizational aspect. And secondly, the idea that it's about thriving. I think it's quite a good word. And in fact, some people even go as far as to say that community-led local development is basically capacity building, that, you know, or that capacity is basically community-led local development. I'm not sure which way around that works best. So I think that's an interesting idea as well, that if communities have capacity, they can develop. And if they don't have capacity, they won't develop. And then the question of what is the building part of capacity? I once, years ago, I was trying to promote capacity building in some community economic development work we were doing in Merseyside in 1998, I think. We did a conference and the French came. It was an EU conference. And the interpreters said that capacity building was construction des bâtiments. And those of you who speak French will know that this is not exactly what we mean. Anyway, we obviously hadn't briefed them well enough, and that's my fault. But I think capacity development is also perhaps a good idea to have in your head, even though in terms of the regulation and everything else, we're always stuck with capacity building, and at least it's there, and we have a notion of why it's important. And just one final word on this, which is that I've worked for a while, particularly in Seoul, in South Korea, with Jeff Mulgan, who's the former director of Nesta. Now he's gone to University College London as a professor. And this eminent thought leader on social innovation and everything else thinks that capacity building is like a muscle. And I actually agree with him, because it's not, what I want to really sell is the idea that it's not a training event. You don't get capacity just by showing up for one meeting. You get capacity by working on it like you would a muscle. And as you work on it and do more and extend your boundaries, you get stronger and you get your capacity builds or develops, whichever you prefer. And that's where I'm going to finish. Find a woman with a bicep on the internet. So there you are. We are gender positive. So I'm now going to introduce my my gang, if I can see them. So I'm going to stop the share, and so I can see who's here. And kicking us off is going to be Stefan Carr from EPRC in Glasgow. He's Scottish, but with some German heritage. Stefan's going to report to us on some studies he's done with various for EPRC, but in various places which have looked at who is doing, which areas in Europe are doing which combinations of CLLD, and it gets quite four-dimensional, I have to say. It's like string theory for local development. The second person I want to introduce is Monica, and there she is. And I think I've really scuppered Monica's evening because I think she had childcare organised, and because I told her it was going to be the first half of our meeting, and in fact it's the second half. But there we go. So thank you very much for showing up. And Monica is someone I've known since about 2008, when she was part of the team that launched FARNet, which was the support organisation for fisheries and coastal areas. And I think I might be wrong on this, and obviously Stefan and Monica will now correct me. I think there are about 350 fisheries local action groups in Europe, which is a tremendous achievement in 2 program periods. The third person I want to introduce is Jean-Pierre Vercruysse, who was also, as he said in his, he couldn't resist chipping in earlier on, that he was there at the beginning of LEADER. So that makes him prehistoric almost. I mean, it's like you were there in 1992 at the founding moment of the LEADER thing. That's amazing. So Jean-Pierre is going to give us a sort of response, because he then went to he was in ADL for many years, and then he joined DG Mare in about 2007, 2008. I don't know the exact date, in order to help them set up FARNet and get Axis 4, as it was called then, going as the CLLD for these areas. So he's going to give us a sort of responder comment on how realistic are what the things we're talking about are. And then I'm hoping, but I can't see him, I'm hoping that Katalin Tiush is somewhere in our audience, who is he's a chair of a LAG in Timișoara in Romania, and also he's a former deputy of the Romanian Parliament, although he's never revealed to us why he didn't get elected again. And so Katalin's going to tell us a little bit about what this new kid on the block, the urban CLLD, is going to be like, and what's happening there, and in a way perhaps talk about capacity building needs, because everybody else is in a sense either fully like me or partially like Jean-Pierre and Monica, or totally like Stefan, policy wonks. And whereas Katalin's a real person because he actually leads a LAG. So that's going to be great. So Katalin's not here. So okay, we'll have to, that just shows that real people are hard to get to show up. He's probably busy. Anyway, let's kick off with Stefan, who's going to give us a 5-minute overview of where we're at with CLLD in Europe.
Yes, thanks.
Only 7 countries.
Thank you.
Katalin,
yes.
I'll stop sharing.
You stopped, I think, and I can start sharing.
Okay. Okay, good. Cool.
Let me see how that works if I do this. Yeah, obviously the first time I've ever been called a Scotsman is by an Englishman. That's interesting, the perspective. Yes, you said so many.
I think of myself as a European, but
that's how I always try to see myself.
But I'm in France now. Yeah, okay.
We're all very European in this virtual room. You can see the slide with the blue table. Yes, I'm nodding. Yeah, I only have 5 to 8 minutes, so I keep it to 5, and please tell me to stop. There's so much I could talk about, but this is all new stuff you have seen and you will know. But I wanted to point you towards the trend that we can see in the development of LEADER/CLLD, or whatever it was called in which program period, and that's in the red circle. Numbers are going up, so we have more and more each program period. We have more. We had 3,333 in this now finishing one, plus minus 5%, I would say, because it's very difficult to count them. And we'll see how many we'll get in the forthcoming one, and that's likely to be the same number or higher. With this also goes an issue that we get up to 100% coverage in some countries. also not least due to the urban areas now being eligible. And there might be some consequences in terms of strategies and interventions. How good are they? You know, is this really a competitive selection as it used to be in the past? At least they were trying to do so. If everyone is involved, and once you have your foot in the leader door, no one will close the door and break your foot. So it's politically very difficult to kick regions out. So to what extent are these actually replacing existing funding streams? Are they doing something innovative? Because in the end, it should all be about innovation. So this picture, this string theory, 4-dimensional, whatever, that's, you don't need to well, look at this in detail. You find this on the LDnet website. It just shows you the variety of combinations that are possible. So from the ones in green, which are just using one fund or two funds from the traditional rural or fisheries funds, to the ones at the very end in red, where all funds are used. There's all sorts of combinations, and I'm continuously updating this table. So if anything is wrong, please tell me and we can change this. And Loris, who is in the room, will recognize this. He did this table in a similar way 4 years ago or so. And I think I kept your color scheme, but the data is probably now completely changed because there's so much when you really look into it that really well, was different from what we thought was actually the case. One of the key things we're looking at is urban CLD. This is the key innovation in 2014-20. Everything else was possible before, and now we have this new type of territory that was eligible. You can see again here on the left these well, the evolutions, different phases from just a rural thing to a rurals and fisheries thing, and then in 2014 we can use the cohesion policy funds. So we have the regional development element and ESF, and all types of territories are possible. So if you as a member state or region decide you want to start a CLD group or allow a CLD group to be started in a certain territory, you can do so. Means a broader thematic range. So we now have business support themes, social dimensions, etc. And but the thing is, though, it is still a predominantly traditional leader and flag game that is played. So out of those 3,333 lags, 2/3 are actually just, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but are only leader. These are just the same focus on rural development as they did before. So it's only a third that does something a bit different. And as you can see, about 800 use cohesion policy funds, and the vast majority well, continues to do whatever was possible in previous program periods. If you look, we have then 228. This is then the ones that Peter was referring to that are only using ERDF or ESF or a combination of the two. And these are, with a few exceptions, these are the urban ones. And just also to remind us what the amount of money we're talking about. So in this little pie chart here, 9 billion euros. So that is pretty significant. Obviously spread across 3,000 lags is then maybe not that much, but still quite a big chunk of EU funding. And this is my last slide. So because I don't have that much time, second last slide. This is the urban CLD, where we have 7 countries. Unfortunately, UK, obviously in 21, 27 is not really that relevant anymore, but these are the ones that have decided to implement urban CLD. And we can see, if you look at them in detail, you can distinguish 2 types of territories. We have the district level, the really community within a city approach, usually in larger cities. We have Lisbon, Bucharest, Timișoara, if Catalin is around, or we have entire cities. And often these cities are questionable whether these are cities, because some of these in Lithuania with 12,000 inhabitants, some small cities in Hungary with 15,000 inhabitants. So there you can see that the borders between urban CLD and the traditional leader are really very fuzzy. So it's not something that clear where you can say this is urban and it's about, you know, deprived communities in some area and this is rural. It's not always that clear cut. And we also have these peri-urban contexts, as I call them, which are not formally urban, like in Slovenia, where Ljubljana is included, or in Gothenburg, which is a rural lag, leader lag, but it covers a new town from in Gothenburg with a number of social challenges. So again, boundaries are fuzzy. And this is the one last slide that Peter asked me to show, because he said, can you show this map that Loris did a few years ago? And that's the one. Just shows you again the diversity in terms of territories. And you can see a lot of EU is gray and different shades of gray. And this means this is only, and I don't mean this again negatively, only leader or fisheries lags, so the traditional approach, but where it is colored, member states went the step beyond and decided, or region decided to use other funds. So hereby, that's me for now. Any questions, please let me know. All the information here you can find in this form or in other similar ways on the LDnet website. So thanks.
Stefan, leave this one up for a minute,
Yes.
because it takes a little bit of digesting and is slightly complicated. Can I also just mention that although ERDF and ESF funded CLLD using the CLLD article is a new thing from 2014, there were innovative member states such as Germany who had been using ERDF and ESF to support leader type activity, CLLD type activity in urban areas from as early as 2000. And Berlin and North Rhine-Westphalia stand out as two lands which were doing sensational stuff from an early date in cities using structural funds. And when the CLLD article finally arrived in the Common Provisions Regulation, sorry about these, that's not an acronym, but it's always technical language around the structural funds. Germany decided not to use it because they thought it would make life more complicated than doing what they had already been doing and carrying on doing it. So there's a load of urban participation type activity, bottom up in cities, that isn't covered in these wonderful maps that Loris and Stefan have been able to produce, but which does exist and is doing real stuff on the ground.
One thing I should add also, because that we're still, everything I presented is the past, or is soon to be the past, because the program period is over. So we're looking ahead into the future, and there are changes, but principal idea is things are continuing, not everywhere. Some experiences have been mixed, and it has been decided to discontinue these multi-funded approach, or these approaches to use other funds than the rural funds, because LEADER is obligatory, you have to do it. So that's fine. But these other options are voluntary. So there are cases where this has been discontinued. Maybe the biggest and maybe the most disappointing one, because it was a very thorough approach, is Sweden, which decided to discontinue. Slovakia is discontinuing. Hungary is discontinuing. But we have also new entrants. The approach is widened in Poland. So here you see 2 voivodeships. We have at least, I think, 2 more that will enter that. We have Estonia. We will enter the cohesion policy funded CLLD game as a new actor. The number of urban legs in Romania will increase. The number of urban legs in Lithuania will increase. So it's not all bleak. So it's a mix of stopping, but also increasing and entering in new. So there's a positive message there as well.
And just for those of you that aren't following the chat, Terry Stavropoulos has just mentioned that there is a bit more analysis on urban CLLD in the Handbook of Sustainable Urban Development Strategies, which I can recommend as being the best read you'll ever see on integrated approaches to sustainable urban development, or SUDS as they helpfully call it. I think probably we've seen the map for long enough now, Stefan. So back to our groups, and I want to bring in Monica now. And the theme of this is really around capacity building and CLLD. And you were in at the start. We refer to men as being in short trousers when they're very young, and you were very young at the start of the FARNet experience, but you're in fact now the only person who's seen it through from start to where it is now, and it's become FameNet, which probably is due to the Alan Parker film of the same name. But can you talk a little bit about what is capacity building in a real context? What do LAGs and managing authorities as well, because it's not just the LAGs that need capacity, what do they need? What did FARNet do to build that capacity in those early days?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks, Peter. So where to start? So first of all, I mean, I think one of the sort of recipes for success, or one of the sort of facilitating things that allowed us to do, I think, to be quite effective in terms of capacity building, was the fact that we had a contract with DG Mare that was very flexible. There was a lot of trust, probably largely because we had someone, i.e. Jean-Pierre, who had come from the ground and who knew and believed in the method. So you had right from the sort of European Commission level that we had the backing. Of course, we had set activities, but we also had a lot of scope. A lot of our work was basically sort of a free liaison, finger on the pulse, liaising with people, finding out what the needs were. Of course, we did needs analysis at the beginning. In fact, we did, I think we did a needs analysis, sort of meeting in every single member state at the beginning. The first year we went to every country. Once we call them flags, the fisheries local action groups were set up, and we sat down for half a day and talked to them and asked them, what do you need, what experience do you already have, and what can we help you with. So I think really one of the key things is it's not a sort of blanket approach, here this is capacity building, you can deliver it. You have to really find out who your stakeholders are and react to that. At a local level, you had some groups that were already leader groups who had a lot of experience already. And they'd already been doing it for at least one programming period, if not a bit more. And then in other areas, you had people who had absolutely no idea. They might have done a bit of, they might have had some sort of idea of their local community or general socio-economic development, but not necessarily the participative approach that leader was. So really, I think starting point, needs analysis, finding out who you're delivering this capacity building for, what do they need, and then you can develop a tailored approach for those. We certainly had a number of, let's say, deliverables, activities that were foreseen over the year that we would plan for. So those would be transnational seminars for all the member states together, transnational seminars for the flags, and transnational seminars for the managing authorities and national networks as well. So we worked on very much two sort of different levels, one at the local level and one on the more administrative delivery issues with the regions and the national member states. So for the flags, I think at the beginning, of course, there was still a sort of, the flag managers were all convinced because that was their job. But a lot of the people on the flag boards had been sort of pulled in because they needed to be there. In this case, it was, being the CLLD was being transferred to fishing communities, and they had to have a representation of fisheries interests on the flag board. So a lot of these local fishing communities or aquaculture stakeholders didn't necessarily believe in the approach, but they were there sort of, okay, we'll take part, but not massively convinced. So in that case, it was very much a question of actually involving them, getting them to speak, getting them, and that only with time really, when they start seeing the results, you start getting them on board properly. But in terms of some of the needs of the flags, so apart from actually developing the sort of or convincing people, overcoming the skepticism about this sort of new approach, and also our fishing money is being given to other people, there was all the sort of methodological capacity building that we helped deliver. Everything from participative development of a local development strategy, how do you go about community outreach, the technical side in terms of what's eligible, what are the administrative processes that the flags need to do. That was generally more a question for the managing authorities, but we would make sure that the managing authorities, put in place systems that would work. So very much encouraging them to try and keep systems as simple as possible, that there was a real delegation of decision making, and that tasks are not all just duplicated by the national authority once the flags had decided what projects they wanted to select. So really working on the one hand with the managing authorities, but then making sure that this was communicated to the flags, And that communication between the local level and the either regional or national level is fundamental as well. And I think, I don't know if you call it capacity building, but I think certainly that's linked with the processes you mentioned in the United Nations. I think it was definition you had, Peter, but those processes, communication and trust within that to allow processes to actually be effective was a very important part of what we were trying to encourage. Then there was thematic knowledge that we would try and bring in to the local level, a lot of best practice exchange of project ideas, of specific different themes that flags wanted to work on. So I think the whole sort of networking side of it as well was extremely important, and makes the flags a lot more self-sufficient in the long term, because we can't be there all the time. But once you build that network, they can then reach out to other people who are helpful for them, or they know that this flag works on this area, that flag works on another theme, and if they need to know something, they've got the contacts to ring them up themselves and find the information or answer they need. Cooperation was another area that did need, and I think this is an ongoing thing, helping like cooperation is always quite an in-demand area for a national or European network, because again, not
okay. Just to explain that last point, cooperation in their world, what, for example, URBAC does in its everyday work, which is to bring groups from different places together to learn and exchange together, but in both leader and it's quite hard to always to organize this sort of transnational working. Just one specific question to you, and just in passing, I remember a fantastic event that you ran in Brussels in the square. I can't remember what year, maybe 2010 or 2011, and you set up a marketplace for good ideas coming from the flags, and each flag could go around and they had a certain amount of monopoly money, and they could go and buy ideas, and then the one that won the meeting was the one that had sold the most ideas. And there was a sad side story to this, which was that there was this amazing flag which had developed a smoked salmon product based on using heather for the smoking, and their product was so good that someone, probably not in the audience, it might have been someone from the event organizers or from the someone stole their smoked salmon while we were doing the awards ceremony for which good idea was the best idea. And I'll always remember that, you know, so good was the smoked salmon that someone stole it.
We never did find the culprit.
I know, we needed Hercule Poirot, but there you go. I had a specific question, which is, to what extent do you think it's good to mix meetings with managing authorities and people coming from the local action groups? Or is it better to give them a separate, I don't know, a separate space in which particularly managing authorities might feel more comfortable only being with each other? And also, I mean, perhaps as a rider to that question, how can you work with managing authorities? I'll let you go on that one.
Managing authorities are good people, Peter.
I agree, but they're not always. I've worked with ESF and ERDF managing authorities, and a little bit with your fisheries ones, and they are good people, but they can get bogged down.
Yeah.
But carry on.
They're very different. Working with flags and working with lags and working with managing authorities is very different. When we organise our events, you have a very different sort of methodologies often to animate things. In answer to your question, should they be separate or together? I think you need to do both. I think managing authorities definitely need a space where they don't, like you often, I guess people know this, I don't know, but managing authorities will often be criticised by the lags because they're not allowing them to do this, or because the delivery system doesn't make sense, or there's too many rules or whatever. when you speak to the managing authorities, there's often reasons why they put in place those rules. And depending on the managing authority, a lot, some are more open than others to taking advice or guidance as to how to set up their systems. Some of them will blatantly say to you, yeah, but the lags don't know what they're doing. We need to do it. They're not going to do a proper job. Others are a bit more, let's say,
Open.
there's a more of a grey scale to their thinking. But I think in the exchange you have between different managing authorities is very useful, because you'll see some managing authorities saying, yeah, but we can't let them do that, and another managing authority saying, well, we've got around this issue by, this is what we do, it's very simple, we just do this and this. And so that sort of very honest exchange of what works, what doesn't work, and also admitting that they don't know certain things. They often don't like to ask questions in front of the flags, or like sometimes the flags might know the regulations better than them. So I think definitely a space just for the managing authorities is very important. At the same time, involving them in meetings, we try and involve them in our transnational seminars, but we don't have space to have all the managing authorities from all the countries all the time. But their presence is definitely useful, and it really opens their eyes to what the flags are trying to do on the ground, to the fact that most flags are very conscientious. They have clear ideas of what they're trying to achieve in their areas, and they get on board with that and see their role as how can we facilitate that, rather than how do we make sure they're not doing things they shouldn't be doing. And it's quite a different sort of, I think, result depending on how you go into the job that they have. Are you trying to facilitate, or are you trying to control damage? And ideally they go in trying, believing in the approach and seeing how they can facilitate that. In terms of getting them together, if you can't do that at a EU level, then of course it's a lot easier to do national capacity building meetings, and that's very important. I think ideally managing authorities would meet with their flags various times over the year and know them well, so that they do have that trust. They can address issues if the flags do need to improve in certain areas. That can be said, training can be provided without anybody feeling that they're being attacked or not wanting to ask questions to improve what they're doing.
All right, I'm going to draw you to a close there. Just one extra thing. I seem to remember that that in some countries, and particularly in Romania and Bulgaria, which had only just joined when FARNet was set up, you also had people on the ground doing capacity building to help the lags to form. And I think Simona may well have been one of those. So we've come full circle there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but the idea that somewhere like, I remember we did once a field visit in the Netherlands, and they really didn't need any help to get going. They were pretty good. And I remember I was sent on a mission to somewhere in Western Finland, where they could achieve a payment within 28 days, which is sort of like the world record in virtually any form of European structural and investment fund. So yeah. I think that still stands as the world record on that. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much, and do feel free to.
Very quickly, just to say yes, and that, I mean, we have a team of geographical experts in each country, and they're really vital, fundamental for being able to actually speak and to bring this capacity building in the language of the local stakeholders is really important.
And they actually visit LAG meetings, don't they?
They will go to LAG meetings. We do from the core team too, to the extent we have the time, but the geographical expert will be the person who will, is generally always available to go to those sort of meetings. They know the culture, the political and administrative setup and context of that country. So they're a really useful part of the system of providing capacity building.
Would you say that they're like coaches to the LAG coordinators?
They can be, if they, it depends on the person as well. Simona, I think she does a lot of, she's very, very invested. It depends on the background of the person. But yes, absolutely, they can be. Within sort of, to the extent, the only sort of proviso we have on the GEs is that they don't have an unlimited, they're not full time. So we can't have the sort of flags just sort of contacting them whenever they want and the GE spending a full-time job helping them, because we
And GE is geographical expert.
a limited number of days for them. But yes, and within a framework, then they can definitely work as coaches, indeed.
Okay, so we're already getting this sense coming from Monica's description of not just the early days, but what they still do, that the capacity building is a sort of ongoing activity. It's not a single shot event. And I think that's perhaps the biggest takeaway we need to take. But some of these other reflections on how you need to have both meetings with LAGs, but also meetings with managing authorities where they're together and where they're apart. And also that you need to operate both at the transnational level, which means a big transnational meeting, and also at the national level because of language issues, and particularly a lot of people participating in local action groups are not going to be fluent in English, which is our only lingua franca, despite the exit of the UK. So quite a number of really important aspects coming through. We don't have so much time, so I'm going to move swiftly on to Catalin, who has rocked up, and I want Catalin, who's the chair of the LAG in Timișoara, but he also chairs the Romanian group of urban local action groups. Catalin, to talk a little bit about, in a sense, how they got going early from 2014 onwards, and particularly what were their needs early on? What were, what did they need help with, and what maybe do they need help with now? And I know that in passing, they've quite recently, I think in the autumn of last year, so 2022, they had a visit to the Lisbon urban CLLD, and they were able to see what was a very, very well developed program of urban local action group activity across 67 micro communities in Lisbon. But Catalin, can you just kick us off with how did it all get started in Timișoara, and particularly this focus on what the LAGs need?
So first of all, all the urban LAGs, I want I had an idea during Stefan's presentation, that maybe it could be helpful for the urban CLLD to have a graphic of demography, because even though in Romania there are over 200 rural LAGs and only 37 urban LAGs, the population is the same. All the populations living in the big city, in the municipalities that are hosting LAGs, are over 4 million. And that's almost the same population that is in the rural area covered by the rural LAGs. So it could be helpful for us to have a graphic of how many people in Europe is served by the benefits of the urban CLLD. If we go with these numbers, we could be more persuasive, and we could share, and we could show that the urban CLLD is something to be noticed by the Commission. That's about the presentation. And to answer to you, Peter, yeah. First of all, we at the beginning, all the urban LAGs are born from the rural ones, because actually in Timișoara, the two rural LAGs that are near Timișoara are founders of the NGO that is the Urban CLLD, the leg Timișoara, is founded by the two rural legs. And in all the other parts of the country, if the rural legs are not founders, the ones that are managing the legs are former leader employees or leader entrepreneurs who knew how bottom up works. So there are a lot of people with a lot of knowledge about how the system should work. And to prove that, we had the federation established before all the lags were signed the contracts for financiation. So once the ministry announced the list of the lags that will be financed, they said, okay, you have 30 days to give us all the documents in order to have the contract ready. And after 30 days, we already had a federation, and we went there and told the financing authority and the ministry, all the legs are represented, and they were what? Which legs? All of them. And they were, how come? I mean, you didn't even, we didn't have the contracts yet signed. It's not important. Here is the decision from the judge. Everything was already done. So that's to prove to you that the legs were more mature and more aware of what should happen, more than the ones who make the guides and wants to give the rules, and the ones who finance the whole urban CLLT. Now, actually, I think this is the case at the big level. I mean, I don't think that besides LDnet, there is any other institution or association that is more aware of the urban CLLD than you, or than us, actually. So that's
just on that point. There is a plan from Lisbon to create a federation across Europe of urban CLLD. Yes. So this will be, and this should be, if there is to be a capacity building event in Lisbon in May, which is on the cards now, and we're negotiating on this, then it will be announced at that meeting. But you know this already. Talk a bit about the needs. I mean, and bravo, by the way, for actually managing to bring together those organizations at such an early stage, because it strikes me that already is a capacity building activity. It brings, by networking people within a country, that really helps get things started. But tell us a bit about what an individual lag like yours actually needs at the early stage and later on.
So we need it, and we still need the ways of procedure to talk with the managing authorities, either national or to the Commission. We have a lot of things that are not quite correct said about the urban lags, because our implementation is a little bit down or a little bit late, and it's not necessarily our fault. And actually, we see when we went to Lisbon, we were all the Romanian delegation was shocked, because for the same amount of money, their indicators were half of or 25% of from ours. So from exactly the same amount of money for exactly the same target group, we must do maybe 3 or 4 times more persons and more things than they have to do in Lisbon. So it's crazy. I mean, it was, we were all shocked because our figures were sometimes even 10 times higher. So they were looking at us and say, we don't believe this. And we all said, it's our figures, it's the figures that we were obliged by the contract to do. So it was pretty strange how the CLLD is seen different from the different authorities and different managing authorities from the ones in Portugal and the ones in Romania. It's been seen different. So maybe we need standardization for all Europe, actually, because we're talking about the same kind of interventions, actually. And we still need to have some good practices going through and exchange between us. In that order, we are trying to make an event in Bucharest, I think in April, before Easter, and maybe some of you could come or could be speakers, or we could you could help us get in touch and be aware to the commission of the Urbact or any other part of the European institution that could be there, that could be present and could be give us a signal. Rui also said that the Lisbon lags will want to be present. I didn't know about the capacity building action in Lisbon, but it's a good thing that they are trying to organize. I think they are organizing it, or LDnet is organizing the Lisbon action.
It's still very open, but we're trying to persuade European Urban Initiative that we need a program, not just a single event, and that because one of the sad things is that despite its success, the Portuguese CLLD will cease this year. So it's the last chance really to have a last hurrah for what they're doing and to see some of the evidence on the ground. So our suggestion, and this is obviously up to you as well, is that the first event would be in Lisbon, but we're also hoping for a second event either in the autumn of this year or early next year in somewhere in Romania, and perhaps in Timișoara, if you would wish to host it. So that's all. It's all under discussion. For the moment, there's no money on the table at all, but we'll see what happens there.
We have in Romania the Federation One capacity building project in order to exchange good practices between us, and we have some money for this event, and it could be I don't know, a prelude for the Lisbon one. Actually, I'll try to talk to Rui. Not to be to make it a European event, it could be the Lisbon event, but a local Romanian event actually, and with the Lisbon guests to say their story, and also the Urbact, in order to see after the Lisbon, to see that this movement is present in a lot of countries, and the need is there in Europe, not only just in few cities. So it could be, if we're thinking the message right, it could be a good thing to have both close a month apart, the two events.
Okay, thank you ever so much, Kathleen. That's really helpful, and I think it really looks as though there's the stuff happening in a range of places. We're running out of time, so I'm going to move on and ask two final contributors. Ursula Budzik-Tabor is going to just comment a little bit, because she's one of the few people who's worked across several different programs, both FARNet and for LEADER, but also And then our final word from Jean-Pierre Vercruysse, who's going to talk a little bit just about, in a sense, what he thinks, coming from a unique activist and policymaker perspective, because he's been both and consultant in the past as well, what he thinks is needed for capacity building in the future. So a quick word from Ursula, and then we'll move on to Jean-Pierre. Ursula.
Many thanks, Peter. I wasn't really planning to have a properly structured presentation. I just wanted to maybe very briefly mention that from what we have heard here, also a very strong message from Katalin and also from Monica, is that we definitely need to focus a lot of capacity building on the managing authorities, not just on the actors on the ground. And I think that is a very clear lesson. I think also that we should be, the capacity building is linked with showing examples of how CLLD can work and what good it can do. And it's a little bit of also a selling activity. It's not just pure capacity building. We're not just telling people how to do things in very technical terms. We should also try to focus a little bit of convincing people that it can work and that they can actually use this approach to achieve their objectives. I don't know if this is something that can be taken on board with the event we're planning. That seems to be very, very clear. I think that's the whole problem maybe with CLLD, is that because objectives are set first at the very local level, strategy level, and then also at the national level with the managing authorities, the program authorities, regional, but national. It is very difficult to show big data, global data, like we have created so many, I don't know, business incubators and so many jobs for disabled people, because it's not necessarily everywhere that people are trying to achieve these and not other objectives. So it's a weakness that we cannot show big figures, but on the other hand, it's something we should tell people to not to worry about. This is precisely a tool that you can use to achieve your objectives. This is what it's about, what you're trying to do, and not what about somebody tells you to do. That's very briefly a contribution from me for the moment, and I will jump in anyway very shortly with the summing up comments, but that's a difference.
All right, thanks very much, Ursula. I'll now bring in, well, just before I bring in Jean-Pierre, I saw Katalin wanted to come back in. Does anyone else who, and I'm apologies, normally we do more interactive events, but the time has been against me today. Does anyone else want to raise anything quickly about capacity building for CLLD before we go on to Jean-Pierre? I can't see all the hands at once because there's so many of you, but I get the sense that we're more or less okay. Katalin, do you just want to be very quick and say something, and then we'll go straight to Jean-Pierre?
No,
okay,
no,
maybe
just, I was just agreeing with our colleague. Don't want to add anything. Thank you.
Okay, I have a small domestic crisis which I'm trying to keep track of. My dog thinks she's found a mouse, and it's driving everybody nuts. But with that aside, let's turn to Jean-Pierre. And Jean-Pierre, you really do have you have seen the whole thing. You're even the only person who's ever really studied Interreg CLLD, which is like a sort of I don't know, it's like the Lost Ark or something. So because there are only 4 LAGs, I think, which are doing cross-border CLLD, and those are between Austria and Italy. And you recently did a study report, which is also available and which we can provide links to. But Jean-Pierre, just from this vast experience, give us a couple of reflections on what you what you've heard today and what you think.
Yeah, it's true that Interreg is a bit the new frontier for me. So it was interesting to look at it, and hopefully there'll be more in the future. But we've heard a lot about the need to create a dialogue between the LAG and the managing authorities. And I think that is pretty fundamental, because I do remember talking with Paul Soto, who said at the time that the INRD, the Rural Network, was not allowed to work with managing authorities. And that leads to a series of very difficult problems that are very difficult to solve. So that link and building some mutual respect between those two groups of people is very important, because you need both to deliver the program. You can't just have the LAG, you can't just have managing authority. You need both to work together. That you need to build. So that, you know, that doesn't happen by accident. I mean, just a small anecdote is in Leader 2, I was in a meeting in France, and the LAG were all there, and the data was there. The data was the managing authority at the time, and the head of managing authority talked to the LAG in a really aggressive way, very looking down at them. They're really putting them down. What the LAG did, they just met outside the building just after, and they created Leader France. So basically, you can say the data created Leader France. So, I mean, there is the need to have that respect to each other, to organize that, and it just doesn't happen. I mean, you have to work on that. And I mean, we heard Monica explain a lot about the way Farnet did that. But it's a lot of work. I mean, and you do need also to pick out, to be aware of what the issues are and what's coming up. What are the difficulties, and what are the difficulties you're going to have to work together on? I mean, just an example for the new period now, there's a new rules in the CPR that says that every grant under 200,000 has to be delivered to simplify cost option. I'm talking about the FESF here. Well, that's quite important. So you do need to get the two, because to deliver that as well, simplify cost option, you need to work the LAG with the managing authorities. They're both concerned, they're both ends of the same mechanism. So they need to work together. They need to see how that's gonna happen. Another point I wanted to raise is that Farnet is a great experience. Farnet is also had two great things. One was there was quite a substantial budget. So you had actually 8 full-time equivalent working for 7 years. I'm talking about Farnet 2 here. So you can do a lot of things with a lot of people. At the end of the day, it's 330 flags. So that is not a big number. So it could be very tailor-made, very close, focused intervention. Maybe a last thing I want to put forward is my with one of all data is that we still fail the capacity to explain to policymakers what's the added value of CLLD. I think Ursula, you just hinted at that. You know, we still don't know how to explain. We know what it is. I mean, we feel it. We know it through our daily work, but we still lack the indicators, the methods, the way of extracting that added value and presenting it to policymakers to gain support for the method. So I think there is still a chantier that we need to open and dig into. And that is part of, for me, of capacity building. We need to have the capacity to tell people what comes out of this method, this method. That's it.
Okay, so the capacity to tell our story of local development better, so that people really understand that it isn't just all about GDP.
Yeah, you need indicators, methods, calculation. I mean, you need some ways of doing that. And I think there are methods around, but then nobody's brought them together in a consistent set of methods. So,
okay. Well, thank you very much for that concluding remark. I'm going to draw this to a close. I'd like to thank Stefan for giving us the map and telling us the story of how this has evolved over these now 30 years of CLLD. Monica for giving us this perspective of what it's like running a support organization for, in her case, coastal and fisheries CLLD. Catalin for giving us the direct experience of this early stage, the first round of urban CLLD in Romania, with all the problems they've had, and not least of eligibility and everything else. And finally, Jean-Pierre and Ursula for chipping in, and Jean-Pierre for giving us a sort of response from the sort of policymakers' perspective, which I thought was very, very helpful. So thank you, all of you, for the contribution. If we were not all on Zoom, we would applaud wildly. You can wave your papers or your hands, but thank you, and I'll be over and out. Thanks again.
Great, that's many thanks, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
It's not the end yet, so don't go if you
Okay.
can stay, because it's not the end of the meeting. We still have one last part, which is the discussion about the future. So if you can stay, please give us a little bit of your time still, and your ideas and your thoughts. I just have to say that this discussion, the CLLD capacity building, makes it very clear that this is definitely one of our topics, that one of the topics we have to follow in the next, this General Assembly is about also deciding where we will go in the next year. So that's definitely one of the topics that comes out as something that has to be followed. Whether we succeed in organizing, in getting these meetings organized, or whether we have to try still other paths and other contacts, but we have to continue that theme, because it's very important and very needed. That's clear. And this cross fertilization between urban fisheries and rural is one of the strengths that we have in LDnet that I think we should continue. But we also want to maybe raise other themes, and there may be other topics that you'd like to follow. So please, this is your time to say what you suggest LDnet should be doing, and to say, me personally want to be involved. We need fresh blood. We need people who want to work with us, to be able to devote a little bit of their time, a little bit of their share, but a little bit of their experience and knowledge. So please come up and tell us what themes you think should be followed, and what activities we can undertake. And since I saw Simona's hand, yes, I was actually going to suggest Simona, because you didn't get a chance before, when Peter was drawing to a close, you didn't get a chance to say something. So you feel free now to add your comment.
Thank you very much, Ursula. I think, and I really love what I heard. I'm not sure I'm entirely agreeing what Catalin said. I know his lag, I know his urban lag. It's much policy here instead of, I mean, it's too much policy or politics. But I think CLLD is also about continuation. Many times, because I like very much what Monica said, the role of geographical expert. I do not know, I don't feel at all geographical, I'm architect, but I understand geographical because I'm working with Romania. But I feel, and many times it was in the 20-something years, and I would just say that the first person here I met was Harris, when he paid a visit in Bucharest in 2003, 4, something. It was fantastic. Thank you very much, Harris. And but it's about continuity. You cannot just disappear, and the role of person involved in the CLLD is not an expert. I would say it's more like a facilitator, negotiator, networking or networker. And it's very much about understanding, because as many lags, flags, urban lags are, they are different. Their feel, it's humanly but they are very much different. You cannot just put some, how is I say, crocus bed or patterns. You just transferring an experience, it's a very delicate thing. You cannot just wear something because it's in fashion or it's payable at the time. So it's very much, I will go very, to say that it's very much stomach feeling. And I would like very much to praise the work of people that still work as a member in lags or fishery lags and urban lags, because they are very much putting their lives for or together with the community. So I would be very interested in working in something which will be, let's say, in all the difference, all the years, all the country. What is this continuity? How you can ensure continuity? Or what are the factors that make this very much to be of worth, not at stake, but to be rewarding? Thank you.
Many thanks, Simona. Thanks for the offer and for bringing this important issue of continuity. And I think also that was partly mentioned by Peter when he was talking about that what we're discussing is not a one-off event. We are actually talking about a long-term program of capacity building, and that is probably also ties in with what you're saying. Okay, let's have other proposals, suggestions. What do people feel that we still can do and are not yet doing, Maria João? Thanks.
Hello, everybody.
No, say
I think that what about we have been hearing here, and it's been very valuable also, the exchange, the learning together, the working together, and so on. And this needs a certain common reference if you want really to exchange and to learn together. And I think that we did not speak here about something that is in the order of the day, that is the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And these goals, they have a reference framework of development that many local and national level are now already trying to endorse their own development and address the SDGs at the same time, even to do the reports that are required by the United Nations and that they can be comparable. And I think that we should also find a way of bringing in this our scheme of capacity building, of working in partnership, also this dimension of the Sustainable Development Goals, because this is something that nowadays all countries and all cities have in common. So this is my suggestion, that we also look to the Sustainable Development Goals in the capacity building schemes that we are thinking to do.
Great, that's a very valid point. Thanks a lot. We will, of course, that depending on what we can finally do, but we will try to take that into account, definitely. I was hoping, we were hoping, I think, that if we had this interesting topic of CLD capacity building, we would provoke you to have more and more ideas of what else we can do. But I see not that many of you raise hands, but I'm very happy, Luis, and then Milan.
Hey, hello. Sorry, I arrived very late to this meeting, but I will pick up the idea, Jean-Pierre's idea about the difficulty to show the added value of CLLD, and I would say that if we keep and trying to link this with this capacity building, and I really think that there is a need on capacity build going on in valuation at local level. And I'm not quite sure if your proposal, Ursula, if we keep doing different things without showing the results that they have together in a national or an European way, if CLLD will survive to another generation of funding. So, and if we read the Court of Auditors report, and if we check what the evaluation help desk is doing now to show the added value of LEADER and CLLD, oh, this is almost certain that this will not continue in the future. So I would say that there is an effort that we all have to do on working on indicators, on working on capacity build at local level to, since the moment of the design of the local development strategies, keeping these indicators in mind, keeping them, collecting data systems ready to work, and then at the end to show at local level, but also at national, at European level, what is the added value. This cannot be just a feeling that we have. This has to be something that we can show. Sorry, I'm not very positive, but that's what I think.
Thanks a lot, Louis. And I completely agree. That's why I actually raised this point. Yes, that definitely there is a lot to be done. Let's see what we can do about it. But let's hear Milan first.
Hello, thank you very much. I'm quite new in this group, so I hopefully that maybe from Slovakia we could still contribute to this discussion. I'm partially working on the for some cities on integrated territory strategies and local development strategies for some areas, and I'm managing the CLD group on the national network of the local action groups. So my focus within this discussion is maybe to introduce urban CLD in Slovakia and looking for the model how to better connect cohesion and agriculture policies in the framework food system, ecosystem services, rural-urban linkage strengthening, and maybe the better need for better coordination implementation of the integrated instruments like ITS, CLD, and maybe other instruments. So we think that this is built up appropriate capacities, maybe the shared management of these local capacities is the key issue, because without the capacities of the local community, which can really are the real actors which can tackle local society challenges, we can not go further. So I consider very important is to have the CLD. Unfortunately, in Slovakia for this program period, it was a bit politically abandoned, but still we hope that maybe a midterm evaluation of the partnership agreement. So we will turn back on Citroen form to have some integrated instruments. So I would like to offer maybe, because we have experiences, Citroen, how it is going in Slovakia, to share with other countries, and maybe to inspire mutually to include this element, because we consider that urban CLD is very important for the cities too. Yes, to enable local city communities to be active. So if it's anyway, I offer maybe certain ways of cooperation and support. Thank you.
Great, many thanks. Especially we haven't had many contacts in Slovakia until now, so it is actually very useful that you have joined, and we hope definitely to stay in touch and use your experience and your lessons. Okay, any other suggestions, proposals? Well, I don't seem to see that many further voices. So that there hasn't been that many ideas on top of the capacity building. What you were saying is actually this is what we should maybe focus on, and keeping in mind, of course, the specific aspects, sustainability, SDGs, measuring added value, and coordinating also between the cohesion policy and agriculture, as Milan mentioned. And yes, and that's still within the big framework of capacity building for CLLD. I see also Joanna wants to come in. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry for being in my coat, but I might have to leave in like 5 minutes. Otherwise, I don't get out of the building, I think. I'm not sure. But yeah, talking about capacity building and ecosystem services, I mean, that's something that from my point of view, I can perhaps, maybe contribute if there's a need to talk more about that, because it's something that I've been involved with and health and well-being, they're not necessarily the core of what you need, but they're sometimes the added values that you can use to promote what you're doing. And if there's any need of that sort of thing, then I might be able to help on those sorts of things with the different things that I've been involved in over the last year, 18 months. Actually, no, a few more than that.
Yeah. Many thanks, Joanna. I think this is indeed, when we talk about capacity building, we always think, okay, we talk about these technical things like how to build a partnership, how to develop a strategy, blah, blah. That's very important. But there are also the certain big themes that we should help the local actors to address. And that definitely is one of those themes that you...
bioeconomy as well, possibly.
What?
The bioeconomy.
Bioeconomy is
that's another of my fields, if you like, that is in development at the moment, and it's again a big thrust from the EU, and I think local communities can utilize that sort of thing as part of their capacity. So yeah, those are two aspects that I cover,
Right.
being an academic and whatever.
Thanks, that's very good. In the meantime, we're having also a lot of useful stuff in the chat. Peter has recently added a nice podcast from BBC that hopefully can be inspiring. It can also be used as a tool for capacity building. These kind of stories from don't know if Peter, if this is what you have in mind, or just to share for our information, also something that we can use if we do design a capacity building program more systematically.
I was thinking about how Jean-Pierre finished saying we need to tell the story better, and I was also struck by this quite good program last week. I think we need to use more other media, and it made me think maybe a podcast series could be interesting if we can get it together. We might have to spend more than £50 in a year, though, and raise some money to do that.
Okay, that's an interesting suggestion. You mean that we could even try to produce some of similar stories, or identify at least? Yeah, it's probably. Yeah, I remember that, was it 2 years ago, we had this whole series of webinars where we had short presentations of projects from the ground, some of them quite inspiring and interesting. We can still go back to some of them and also identify new ones.
Yeah, it was during COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that started a whole new type of activities that we can maybe go back to.
We should probably wrap up, no?
Yeah, it is time to wrap up. So I don't think there are any big conclusions to be made. I ask, of course, anybody to come in with reflections on today's discussion, and ideas, but we did also say that at the very end of the meeting we will have something like informal drinks if anybody can help themselves to something, to a drink. But anyway, just to give a big thanks to, well, Peter first of all, and his speakers, his team, and to Harris and Jean-Pierre for the presentation or preparation of the and presentation of the annual report, and to everybody for joining us. But please stay and continue chatting in a less formal way.